Hi, welcome to the Rewind the Timeline podcast brought to you by thetimelinemachine.com. I am your host, the Timeline King. This is the podcast where we go back in time and take a look at all the anniversaries that have happened this past week. Specifically, we're going to be looking at all the 10-year, 25-year, 35-year, 50-year, and so on anniversaries of major pop culture brands and events. This is episode 24 of this podcast, and for this episode, we will be looking at all the anniversaries that have happened from September 10th all the way until September 16th of 2023. Let us begin. We start with September 10th. We have 5 shows that debuted 35 years ago on September 10th, 1988. The first is A Pup Named Scooby-Doo. Out of all the incarnations of Scooby-Doo, this one is my absolute favorite. Even now, 35 years later, I can still recite the theme song by heart. There's a mystery in town, so call the coolest pup around. And if I had a better singing voice, I would even sing the whole thing right now. So A Pup Named Scooby-Doo is the 8th incarnation of the Scooby-Doo franchise, which originally began with Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? In 1969. It continued with the new Scooby-Doo movies in 1972, and so on and so on until today. Now, during the 1980s, there was a popular theme of taking beloved cartoon characters and turning them into children. So it began with like Jim Henson's Muppet Babies, and when that became popular, every other studio was thinking of doing the same thing with their own cartoons. Hanna-Barbera, especially, they tried to milk the concept for all that it was worth. So they created like the Flintstone Kids, Tom and Jerry Kids, Yo Yogi. And I will say, like, unlike the rest, A Pup Named Scooby-Doo actually did work. And I think a big part of that was like the way that they developed the characters. In the original series, only Shaggy and Scooby had any kind of personality, but in Pup Named Scooby-Doo, they had Daphne be the spoiled rich girl, they had Fred be the conspiracy brain, and then Velma was like the silent genius who like had all the answers. Now, since they were all kids, like the mysteries were just like lighthearted, stupid stuff, and it worked well. I will say that continuity-wise, this show doesn't work as well as the original. So in the original continuity, the gang find Scooby when they're teenagers, right, at a pup store. But here, it seems like they all grew up together in the same town. Now, I mean, obviously, continuity doesn't matter that much for like a kids show. You know, like A Pup Named Scooby Doo is fun regardless, and it was actually so good that like everything Scooby Doo related from this point onwards ended up matching the continuity of Pup. So that just kind of shows you how like big this incarnation was in kind of redefining the franchise moving forward. So if you want to like relive the nostalgia, you can catch this show for free on Tubi. Happy 35 years to A Pup Named Scooby-Doo. Next is ALF Tales. So I'll admit I never grew up with the Alf franchise. I only discovered the character recently, and I was surprised that like Alf was like very popular like in the 1980s. He had like 3 TV shows. So most people know the main one, right? The Alf live action sitcom, but he also had like a couple of animated shows. The first was Alf the animated series, which was a prequel. To the sitcom about like this alien's life on his home planet. Yeah. So Alf is basically short. Alf is short for alien life form. The character's name is actually Gordon Shumway. So ALF Tales was a spin-off of Alf the animated series, and it told weird versions of the traditional fairy tales, kind of like what we got from Tales from the Goose Lady. And you can check out all the episodes of this cartoon. They're available for free to watch on Tubi. Happy 35 years to ALF Tales. Next cartoon is Beany and Cecil. This was a revival of a 1962 animated series done by Bob Clampett, who was himself like a legendary animator. So this revival only lasted for 8 episodes because ABC didn't think that it was suitable enough for their children's programming. And even without watching the show, it's easy to tell like why the show was so controversial. It was created by the same guy who created Ren and Stimpy, John Krafalski. And all of the episodes of this show are available on YouTube, so you can check it out and decide for yourself if ABC was justified in their controversy. I will say that without this show failing, we probably never would have gotten Ren and Stimpy, because John Krafalski would have never moved it to Nickelodeon. So maybe it did all work out for the best for everybody. Happy 35 years to the new adventures of Beany and Cecil. And speaking of Nickelodeon shows, another debut for September 10th, 1988 is Kids Court on Nickelodeon. I was able to find a couple of the episodes of this show online, and I think I understand the basic premise of this one. It was like a mock court show dealing with like typical kid problems. Like a kid is angry that his best friend broke his stereo, and they go to court to get that resolved. I wish I could find more episodes of this show just to see like what are the problems that they dealt with. But this series just hasn't been that well preserved, and it has pretty much like faded into obscurity. But if for anybody who remembers this show, I guess you can see some 80s nostalgia. Happy 35 years to Nickelodeon's Kids Court. And the last debut for that day was Police Academy, the animated series. So this was based on the Police Academy movies that were popular in the 1980s. Although I don't really get the logic of making an animated show based on an R-rated franchise that is supposed to appeal to children. But that's kind of the logic of TV execs for you. So this show is supposed to take place between Police Academy 4 and Police Academy 5. But I don't know how well it can actually fit in that continuity since this show has like talking dogs and robots. Yeah. So just let me know if you can find any explanation for that. And if you have seen it, then happy 35 years to the Police Academy, the animated series. Now we move to September 11th. First is 50 years ago, September 11th, 1973. We have the release of the film I Escaped from Devil's Island. This movie is set in 1916 and features a group of prisoners trying to escape a prison island off the coast of French Guiana. This film is notable for starring Jim Brown, who is a football player for the Cleveland Browns. Jim Brown is considered like one of the greatest football players in history, and he sadly passed away earlier this year at the age of 67. 87, he passed away. This movie is available for free to watch on Tubi for anybody who wants to see it. Happy 50 years to I Escaped from Devil's Island. Also on the same day, again 50 years ago, on September 11th, 1973, we have the debut of Marvel Comics character Howard the Duck in the comic book Adventure into Fear number 19. Howard the Duck was a creation of writer Steve Gerber and artist Val Mayerik. So the original Howard story says that he was abducted from his home dimension. In his home dimension, everybody's like a duck. And he was brought into the Florida Everglades, which in the Marvel universe is kind of like the nexus of all realities. And right away, like Howard looks and acts like a louder and angrier version of Donald Duck. And probably because of that reason, that character quickly became like a fan favorite, and he ended up getting his own like a theatrical movie 13 years later. Howard the Duck was actually the first Marvel character to get a big screen, full-fledged movie. Now I know what you're probably thinking, right? Like out of all the characters in Marvel stable, how does a C-list like Howard the Duck make it to the silver screen before Spider-Man or X-Men? And the answer is George Lucas, who was like a big fan of the Howard the Duck comic books. At the time, Lucas was like very popular with his Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and American Graffiti films. So whatever Lucas wanted to do, a studio was like willing to take a chance on. Unfortunately, unlike Star Wars or Indiana Jones, Howard the Duck was a complete bomb with both critics and audiences. And it was said that the movie failed to capture any of the humor or satire associated with the comic. And I think in hindsight, Howard the Duck was definitely the beginning of like Lucas kind of like losing his touch. And it would lead to like, it would be a sign of like more lower quality projects in the future for him. What we would have like Willow or the Star Wars prequels or Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And it's a shame, like, because I think if Howard the Duck had been more successful, we probably would have gotten like a Spider-Man movie or an X-Men movie a lot sooner than we actually did. And like whenever the subject of Howard the Duck comes up, we always have to mention like his creator Steve Gerber, who was involved in a lawsuit with Marvel for years to get the rights to the character. And it's funny that like once the movie bombed, nobody really cared like who owned Howard the Duck anymore. Steve Gerber died in 2008, so we don't know like how he would have felt about Howard's recent resurgence in popularity with his appearance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. So will we get another Howard the Duck movie in the future? Probably not. At least not anytime soon. But I think that since the Man-Thing was introduced in the Werewolf by Night TV special, I would like to see some kind of like Disney Plus TV show or special kind of involving Man-Thing and Howard the Duck teaming up. I think he's a great character, and I think he definitely has like some more potential to be utilized. Happy 50 years to Howard the Duck. Next one is 25 years ago, September 11th, 1998. We have the release of the horror movie called Cube. This is the film about a group of strangers who wake up in a series of cubic cells. They don't know how they got there. They don't know why they're there. But the movie is about them looking for a way out. And I felt like this was like a very gripping movie. It kind of just like puts you into these characters' space, because like we're like them, we don't know what's going on, and I feel like it was good in like building up the mystery, and I'd definitely recommend it if you like watching horror movies. It's currently available for free to watch on YouTube. Check it out. Happy 25 years to Cube. And you can't mention September 11th without talking about the September 11th attacks that happened 22 years ago. It's one of the most tragic days that the country has ever faced. Rest in peace to all the souls who perished that day, and God bless all the brave police and firefighters who served to rescue any survivors that day. We move to September 12th now. And we begin with 50 years ago, September 12th, 1973. We have the birth of Paul Walker in Glendale, California. Walker has been in many movies. He was in She's All That, Varsity Blues, but his claim to fame is as Brian O'Connor in the Fast and Furious franchise. Sadly, Walker died in 2013 at the age of 40 in a car accident. He would have been 50 years old now. Rest in peace, Paul Walker. Now we go to 35 years ago, September 12th, 1988. We have the premiere of Denver, the Last Dinosaur, which got released in syndication. So this show is about this group of teenagers who find a dinosaur egg. They keep the dinosaur for a pet and are careful to like keep him a secret. I think this was one of the shows that kind of like that was created to kind of take advantage of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles demographic. I didn't know that a dinosaur wearing sunglasses and playing guitar would appeal to children, but I mean, turns out I could not have been more wrong. The entire show is available for free to watch on Tubi if you want to check it out. Happy 35 years to Denver, the Last Dinosaur. And now we get to 25 years ago, September 12th, 1998, which was a big day as Fox Kids debuted many new shows on their Saturday morning lineup. One of my earliest television memories was waking up on this day to like all the new great shows that premiered. So let's go over my childhood one by one. The first show on this day was the Mr. Potato Head show. I first got introduced to the character Mr. Potato Head through his appearance in Toy Story. As a stupid kid, I just thought that Mr. Potato Head was something that the Toy Story films invented. It turns out that the character is much older than that, and it was such a disappointment for me to find out that this show like had nothing to do with Toy Story. And that's not to say that this was a bad show, it just wasn't what I was expecting. Now, the Mr. Potato Head show never got like an official release, but someone uploaded all the episodes online, so you can watch it there and make your own judgment. Happy 25 years to the Mr. Potato Head show. Next is Godzilla the series. So this is a sequel to the 1998 Godzilla movie starring Matthew Broderick. You know how in the 1998 movie, well, I guess if you don't know, I'm going to spoil this for you. So the 1998 Godzilla movie, it ends with the last of Godzilla's eggs hatching, right? And this show kind of picks up right from that moment. So we have Godzilla's final offspring. He's the star of this show, and he's just as big as the 1998 Godzilla. And what's worse is that he has this like big atomic fire breath. I know a lot of people consider the 1998 film to be a disappointment. I personally don't see it that way, but I can understand if you decide to compare it to the original Japanese version, how you would feel cheated. However, I think everyone can agree that like Godzilla the series kind of succeeds where the movie fails. It gives us a Godzilla that is actually a formidable threat, and has him do like many exciting stuff, such as opposing like many other mutants. So I absolutely love this show, and I bought it on DVD like as soon as it was available. I also especially like the human characters. I feel like their personalities and the way that they play off of each other adds drama that's like just as intriguing as seeing the monsters fight. It's very rare when you can say that like in regards to Godzilla stories. Like most of the time you're just there for the Godzilla monster fights, but in this show I like the human drama as well. This series lasted for 2 seasons and 40 episodes. There are DVDs available that you can get, and I'm sure that somebody must have uploaded the episodes to YouTube. So happy 25 years to Godzilla the series. Next is Young Hercules. So I said that Godzilla the series was a sequel. This one is a prequel to Hercules the Legendary Journeys, and it depicts Hercules as a teenager. And I don't know what it was about Hercules in the 1990s, but we had like 3 different TV shows about Hercules that were all running at the same time. So there was Hercules the Legendary Journeys, starring Kevin Sorbo, then Disney's animated Hercules cartoon, and now we had Young Hercules with Ryan Gosling. I don't know why they cast Ryan Gosling in this role, but if this was supposed to be a prequel to the Legendary Journeys, like Ryan Gosling looks nothing like Kevin Sorbo. Which isn't to knock like Gosling as an actor. Like I think he is fantastic in whatever he does. I really liked his movies like Drive, Blue Valentine, and La La Land. Most recently, he was in Barbie, and it's funny like how regardless of some of like the high profile movies that Gosling has acted in all his interviews he has consistently said that his favorite acting role was Young Hercules. And I think a lot of that might have to do with like the adventure and fantasy aspect of this show is just so outside like Ryan Gosling's current wheelhouse, where he delves into like serious dramas. So I can imagine like him having a good time working on a show like this, especially like if everybody else was also like friendly and created a fun atmosphere. So I was like a big fan of Young Hercules and pretty much like watched every episode as it aired on Fox Kids. One thing I hated about the way that Fox Kids played the episodes was that the series had like a very specific chronological order to it, and Fox was just like playing the episodes at random. Like you would have this one episode where Hercules hangs out with a character, right? And then 10 episodes later, we would get the episode where Herc meets that character for the first time. And it was like very annoying to watch. But regardless, I really like this show. Nowadays it's like totally easy to find this series on DVD or online somewhere. They pretty much bank on Ryan Gosling's popularity for this. There are also a couple of Young Hercules novelizations of the TV episodes as well. Both books were written by Star Trek author Keith R.A. DiCandido. So this show went even beyond Fox Kids for a little bit. Too bad we never got a Young Xena show though. That would have been really good to see. Hollywood make that happen. Actually, on second thought, don't. With the way that you're doing reboots now, I don't think I would like it, even if you did make it. But happy 25 years to Young Hercules. Next is Saban's Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog. So Saban had this small franchise in the 90s called Power Rangers. I don't know if you ever heard of it. No, of course. Power Rangers is like super popular in the 90s, and it actually just experienced a resurgence in popularity with Power Rangers in Space that came out like earlier in 1998. But the problem with Power Rangers was always that since Saban licensed the Ranger footage from Japan, they always had to split their profits with the Japanese studios. So in 1998, they decided, let's make our own Ranger show where we can keep all the money for ourselves, and that's how we got Mystic Knights. A lot of the show is inspired by Irish mythology. Tir na Nog is a location of the fairies in Irish mythology, and then they kind of combined that with like the the standard Power Rangers tropes. So you have this team of five, right? There's one Mystic Knight who represents Earth, another one who's a fire, then you have a Water Knight, Air Knight, and then a Forest Knight. I don't really understand why Forest was part of the Element group, but I guess they needed a fifth one, and that's what they chose. Now, what really stinks about this show is that it ends on a cliffhanger, right? So they defeat the main antagonist for the season, but they reveal that there's still like another one hanging out in the shadows, lurking somewhere, who's coming up with another plan. I know at one point they were thinking about doing a second season called Mystic Knights Battle Thunder, but I guess ratings and more importantly toy sales just weren't good enough to justify that. I think the show had a good premise, but I never particularly felt like the characters were memorable or that the actors had that charisma on screen, and it probably explains why like none of these people have appeared in anything major since. I would like to watch this show again to see if like my opinion holds up so many years later, but sadly it never got like an official release, and all the episodes are on YouTube are just like so low quality that's it's hard to enjoy them. But yeah, if you saw this show, if you grew up with it like I did, happy 25 years to Saban's Mystic Knights of Tin and Oak. Next is The Secret Files of the Spy Dogs. So the premise of this show is that all dogs are actually secret agents who solve crimes, right? They're supposed to be secret. They're supposed to be secret agents, and yet a lot of the time they just run around in plain sight to solve the crimes. And I'm like, has no one ever noticed these dogs like standing up and running? I saw a couple of episodes of this. I don't think I was ever really a fan. This is another one of those shows that has never had like an official release, although I'm sure you can find like a couple of episodes on YouTube. I think the most memorable part of this show is that Adam West plays Dog Zero in it. Other than that, I would kind of just say skip it. And last one for this day is Mad Jack the Pirate. If you've ever seen the show Black Adder, this is essentially the animated version of it. So it's about a pirate named Jack who considers himself like more successful than he actually is. Kind of reminds me of like Jack Sparrow for Pirates of the Caribbean. And much like Spy Dogs, this is just like another show that I never really got into and I never found to be that funny. It only lasted for like one season of 13 episodes. And you know, now that I'm looking at the images of Mad Jack, he kind of looks like he's supposed to be like Turkish or Romanian. And you know, wow, that really goes to show you how progressive the 1990s were. Like, we had a Turkish lead on television, and it was never even addressed in the show. So all the Mad Jack's episodes have been uploaded on YouTube. It's only like 13 episodes, so you can easily watch this one online in like a day. Happy 25 years to Mad Jack the Pirate. Now we get to September 13th. This is 75 years ago, September 13th, 1948. We have a major world event. This is the annexation of Hyderabad to India. So India got its independence the year prior, right, in 1947 from the British, but there were still some kingdoms within India that chose to retain their sovereignty. Hyderabad was one of those kingdoms that held out from like joining India. And in an effort to like unify their nation, India launched an attack on Hyderabad. And what's really crazy is that even though Hyderabad had 220,000 soldiers, they still lost to India's army of only 35,000. And so it was like on September 17th, 1948, that Hyderabad finally surrendered to India and has remained part of that country ever since. Happy 75 years to the annexation of Hyderabad into India. Next is 25 years ago, September 13th, 1998. We have the anniversary of a few new Oh Yeah cartoons. First is Kitty, the Hapless Cat. In this cartoon, we have the story of a cat who gets adopted by a few different owners. First one is a blind woman who is simply too dumb to live. Then there's like a stupid married couple who think that Kitty is killing their baby when in reality he's trying to save it. After that, it seems to be a gay guy who's like obsessed with making Kitty like his previous cat Fluffy. And finally, Kitty lands himself with two scientists who put Kitty into an experiment. How long can Kitty survive once he is attacked by a group of dogs? I thought this was like a really fun show that managed to deliver as like many gags as possible in its 7-minute runtime. So I would say check this one out. Now, next one is That's My Pop. There's a dinosaur in the house. This one was created by Pat Ventura, who is the same person who created the Jamal of the Funny Frog shorts. And what's weird is that like That's My Pop feels like it is supposed to be a Jamal episode. You know, you just take out the family of frogs and replace them with a family of bears, and it's kind of almost like the same dynamic. You know, with the smart alecky daughter, the like goofball father. There were a couple of episodes in this one. Sorry, a couple of moments in this episode where I kind of where I kind of chuckled. But you know, I think what really prevents me from liking is this one is kind of just like that annoying laugh track that shows up throughout the cartoon. It just made the cartoon less funny than it already was. And last for this week is Hubbykins versus Sweetie Pie. This is another short created by Rob Vanzetti, who is like my favorite Oh Yeah creator. I like the way that he has like these weird pairings in his cartoons. Like in this one, you have the husband and wife, you know, who are normally supposed to get along, and yet they just, you know, they're ready to like go and fight each other. Okay. So I say that they're husband and wife, but and I think that, but it's never clarified in the cartoon. They might just be domestic partners. They're never seen wearing wedding rings. And anyway, in this cartoon, like Sweetie Pie gets tired that Hubbykins never does any cleaning around the house, so that kind of leads to a huge fight between the two of them. It's a fun cartoon, and I like that there's like no dialogue in it. It makes it feel like an old Hanna-Barbera or Tom and Jerry cartoon. It's definitely one of my favorite Oh Yeah shorts. Check this one out for sure. Let's go to September 14th now. This is 25 years ago, September 14th, 1998. We have the debut of 4 television shows. The first is Judge Joe Brown, which premiered in syndication. This is also the first courtroom TV show to star a black judge. It ran for a long time as well, for 15 seasons and 3,000 episodes. Next is The Roseanne Show, also premiering in syndication. After her sitcom ended, Roseanne Barr decided to do her own talk show. Not as successful as her sitcom. This one lasted for only 2 seasons and 281 episodes before it was canceled. Roseanne herself would get canceled like 20 years later, but that's another story. Next is TRL, Total Request Live. In the days before YouTube, if you wanted to watch your favorite music video, this is the show that you had to check out on MTV. They only played 10 music videos a day, so the videos that were the most requested would get a slot on this one. And like I said earlier, like the rise of YouTube kind of ended up making TRL irrelevant, and that is really like what ended up killing the show's popularity. But TRL like did run for a long time, like for 20 seasons and 2254 episodes. And lastly, on the cartoon side of things, we had the show Hysteria premiering on Kids WB the same day. So this was intended as like a sort of a way to educate children on history in like kind of like a fun way. And being like a big history person myself, obviously, the Timeline Machine, I really like this show, and I wished it was like more popular than it actually was. So there's nothing on September 15th. Let's go to September 16th. First is 35 years ago, September 16th, 1988. We have the release of the show Rin Tin Tin Canine Cop, which premiered on the CBN Family Channel. This show went by another title in Canada called Cats and Dogs. The show was about this police family who adopts a dog, and the dog helps with like various crimes. Basically, it's like Lassie except with police officers. And next is 10 years ago, September 16, 2013, we have the premiere of Sleepy Hollow on Fox. They say this show is inspired by The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving, but just barely. The only thing it really has in common is the names. So this show stars this character called Ichabod Crane, right? He undergoes this like Rip Van Winkle situation, and he wakes up 200 years later in the modern day. Ichabod joins forces with a police officer in the modern day, and they end up solving like various supernatural crimes in the town of Sleepy Hollow. The show also sets up some kind of like mystery with Ichabod's past, and I really wanted to like this show, but I never felt like it had any sense of like direction to it. The good part of the show was the dynamic between the two main characters. Ichabod is from 200 years in the past, and he's getting used to how much the world has changed since then. However, the mystery with like Ichabod's past was kind of just set up very poorly, and when you get a payoff, it's not really satisfying. And for that reason, I kind of like bowed out of the show after the first season. And it seems to be a good thing I did. The general consensus was that the show went downhill in seasons 2 and 3. The entire series is available on Hulu for anyone who wants to watch and judge for yourself. And in season 3 of Sleepy Hollow, they do a crossover with Bones, probably in an attempt to improve like Sleepy Hollow's ratings. Like I said, I bowed out after season 1, so I never saw that episode. Didn't watch Bones regularly either. People say that it was like a good crossover episode. Perhaps one day I will binge watch the whole TV show, but this show really left a bad taste in my mouth after the first season, and I kind of still hesitate to give it a second chance. Happy 10 years to Sleepy Hollow. And that's it for this week's episode. Tune in next week for episode 25 of this podcast. Follow us on social media to stay up to date on all the latest anniversaries. We are on Facebook at the Timeline Machine and on Instagram at Waste My Time Machine. Actually, for Waste My Time Machine, we recently crossed 1,000 posts. Yeah, I Escaped from Devil's Island was our 1,000th post. Yeah, so thank you to everybody who likes our Instagram page and helps support us. Check out the website, the Timeline Machine, where you can find more original content. We also crossed 100,000 views this week as well. I think September 12th was when we crossed the 100,000 views. So yeah, thank you for everybody who's been supporting this website since the beginning. Even if you're just discovering it now and you like our stuff, visit our page, share our social media. Like, every little bit helps. But most importantly, keep rewinding the timeline.